Alex, it was a really good win on Saturday. You were animated throughout on the touchline, I noticed. You'll know Preston more than most. What are your thoughts about the real dangers from this game?
Well, I think their record and the amount of goals they haven't conceded, shall we say, is probably gives you a good indication as to what type of team they are. Certainly this season, I think teams have struggled to break them down. They sit, whether it's by design or not, I'm not quite sure, but they sit really deep. They make it hard for you to break them down. They're dangerous in transition. And yeah, apart from probably the Norwich game, I think they found it difficult and they found goals hard to come by. So, but what they are is they're competitive in every game. They haven't had many defeats this season, and they'll certainly be hard to beat, particularly at home.
You are known to improve teams defensively, and you've certainly made Stoke look more solid at the back. Now it's difficult to get the balance right in attack. I mean, obviously Liam Delap got off to a scoring sensation on Saturday with that tap-in. How hard is it for Dwight Gale now? Because he's played so many matches, he works so hard, he runs around. How do you manage to get that balance right so the strikers can make more of an impact?
Yeah, but if you look at Dwight in terms of his contribution, though, Dwight's a different type of player now than what he was maybe 5 years ago. If you look at Dwight Gale 5 years ago when he was, whether it be Newcastle, whether it be West Brom in the Championship, his probably biggest asset was his pace in behind. He played in the shoulder, whereas like most players as they get older, they adapt their game. He's been a really clever link for us in terms of taking the ball in. I think he's very intelligent in terms of his movement, but more importantly, he's had some opportunities. I think you think of the Swansea game here, he had the header, he just probably gets up a bit too early. The header at Burnley, where if he puts it either side of the goalkeeper, he probably scores. I think he's had something like 5 or 6 disallowed goals so far this season. So I don't necessarily think, listen, it's not as if we're creating 10 chances a game for him, but he certainly had opportunities to score. I think some of the goals that he scored, I think particularly QPR, I don't think he was offside when I looked at it back. So I think he's been a bit unfortunate, but I don't really overemphasise the fact that whether it be a striker, whether it be an attacking midfield player, if they don't get goals, it's not a massive concern to me, because it will come over the course of time. What their contribution to the team is more important for me, and I think Dwight's contribution recently, he's been an excellent link. He's allowed us to get up the pitch because he's secure in possession, his movement's clever, and what he does is he balances off whatever his strike partner is. So if they're one that wants to run in behind, Dwight will do the alternative. If they're one that they're not wanting physical contact, Dwight will happily go and put physical contact in there for us. So in that respect, I've been really pleased with how he's performed. I think it would be nice for him more than anybody if he could go on the score sheet, but it's not something that overly concerns me.
How sort of influential is he in the dressing room?
Yeah, very good, because I think when you've had success as a player, when you've had promotions, when you've played a lot of games in the Premier League, naturally you're hoping that type's going to be one of your vocal ones in the changing room and one guys that can obviously look up to, and that's exactly what it is. So yeah, he's been excellent. His appetite for training, his appetite in terms of helping his teammates, in every aspect of that, yeah, very good.
What's got you here won't get you there is one of the popular sayings in life, but you've come in, you've had
Is that one of your popular sayings?
One of my popular sayings, yeah. I knew you'd have a go at me for that. When you look at the team going forward, you'll have looked at everything you can do to get these 0.1% increments.
Yeah.
Have you changed anything? Have you noticed anything when you've come in that you think, well, we'll do that differently pre-match or in training?
You're probably better asking the lads that question, because I've got my processes that I go through. So yeah, basically for day one, I've sort of implemented how I see things going, when we train, how we train, the length of time we train. So yeah, the tempo of training certainly went up. I think fitness levels, for a personal point of view, for the players, I think certainly improved, and that's for a variety of reasons. So I'm not suggesting as if they didn't train hard before. I think when you're bringing your team together and you get guys like Fosu, you get guys like Liam Delap, we've got a lot of loan players. We've got 6 loan players in the building, and when you get those guys, and some of the lads that we did bring in, some of them came late, so they're not fully up to speed, they're not fit. I think now that they're getting to the levels of fitness where they can show their best qualities. You know, my argument would be beforehand, I'm not sure they were, certainly for Fosu's sort of predicament, shall we say. I think Tariq in the last 3 games has looked fit, he's looked strong, and you're starting to see what he is and how good he can be. I think prior to that, he looked as if he was chasing fitness, and we've had, as everybody knows, a huge injury list, which I think is starting to improve. And again, that comes down to fitness, it comes down to how robust you are as a player. Can you churn out 3 games a week in the Championship? So, yeah, I think there's tweaks within the game that we've made. You know, we go off of stats a lot in terms of how our performance looks, because performance and results are 2 separate things for me. I think if we get the performance element right more often than not, we'll win more games. And in terms of pressures, regains, pressing the ball in the opposition's half, turnover on the ball, locking teams in, not allowing them to sort of hit us in the counter, sustained attacks, all the elements of the game for us have dramatically improved game on game. We're sort of basically surpassing our own sort of previous record, shall we say, as the games go on, which is a good sign.
A lot of fans, when you came in, felt that you might be just trying to get through to this split season, so in the middle of November you'll get a break and you could go off warm weather training and maybe look at the transfer window in January to bring players in. But you strike me as somebody that will work with what you've got and try and get the best out of them, as you've said. Are you now more confident of getting a higher finish in the league than you were when you took the job on?
I think, obviously, when you take any job on, you take it on with optimism, you take it on with an expectancy that you want to be the guy that's done better. That's why you take the job on in the first place. But I'm not one of them, and I don't think I've ever done it anywhere I've been where I go, I need to get my own players in, I need to get to January, I need to get to the end of the season. That's not the way I work on it, because the simple fact is with football, it's such short-termism in the Championship that it's about what you do in the next game, what you do the next day, so I don't really plan too far ahead, albeit there is plans in the background, but my immediate concern is getting the lads ready, getting the team ready, winning the next game. So, and everywhere I've been, really, yeah, like you say, I work with what I've got. I don't sort of harp on too much about what I would like or what I'm hoping to have or whatever. The fact is, in football, every club's got different and certain restrictions that you need to work within, and my job's to make the best of where we are. So, and I think what we have seen is, in my opinion, I think we've seen gradual improvement, and I'm hoping that continues.
You talked about setting expectations and doing things to raise the fans' expectations, and certainly you did that on Saturday. This weekend, Stoke have got more fans going to an away game for a long time. How have the players trained this weekend, and will those fans give you a great boost when you run out at Deepdale?
Players are not too dissimilar to fans in the fact that fans get excited by good performances, and being able to relate to what they see on the pitch. Players naturally, when they play well, are much more optimistic, they're in a better mood, the feeling about the place is good. So yeah, they've trained really well. I've been in the game long enough but to know that counts for nothing, and what we don't want to do is have a really good performance and a good result and then have a damp squib after it where everybody's going. And what I will say, the game at the weekend, this game is going to be very, very different, and the fact that Sheffield United came here probably expecting to beat us and came out to beat us. Preston are a different type of team, and I think that the sort of the tally in terms of goals scored and goals conceded reflects that. So it's not an open game, shall we say, and I know people will point to the Norwich game. I would probably argue that's more off the back of the way Norwich played rather than the back of the way Preston play. So this game is going to be very, very different for the weekend. Every game is made complex by fans saying you should do this, that and the other, but for you it's I know you're laughing, but it happens. No, it's true.
For you it must be quite simple. If players are ready physically and mentally and they win the one-to-one battles, then they've got a really good chance of winning a match. Is that what you major on every game? I mean, you seem as though you're a man that wants to simplify things and give everybody something that they have to do. Yeah, well, I think clarity is really important, because with clarity then becomes accountability, doesn't it? So if you understand what your role is, what you're expected of you in possession, out of possession, then what we can do is we can naturally judge how you've played and how you've performed, because if you do that side well, which we've told you to do, and you do that side well, then it becomes really straightforward. Not every game though is about winning individual battles,
You know, I think sometimes you get games that are a man-for-man sort of duel, shall we say, that because the shapes are matched up. Do you know what I mean? Like, for instance, Saturday, their spare player was a centre-back, our spare player was a centre-back. So it really has a sort of match-up all over the pitch apart from one position. But then you've got other games that are strategy v strategy, where we play a different shape for them. Their spare players are going to be their wing-backs, our spare players are going to be our full-backs. Do you know what I mean? So who can utilise those spare players better? So all the games for different reasons are very different, and as such you need to then judge them sort of slightly differently because you're trying to do different things in different games. And I think that's the thing about the Championship, and that's why if you look at most teams, consistency is really difficult to get, because there's some teams in the league that you're really catered for beating, and there's other teams where, even irrespective of where they're on the table, for specific reasons, they're really difficult games for maybe our sort of players that we have, players that other teams have. Yeah, and that's why the Championship's so tough.
And lastly from me, you're going back to one of your former clubs. Presumably you'll get a few claps, you'll probably get a few other things said about you, or possibly. I don't get the feeling that it would affect you.
No. Listen, I've been in football long enough. I mean, what happens is when everything's going well, then you get all the plaudits you deserve. When it's not going well, you'll get all the criticism you deserve. So yeah, I'm quite easy with that. I'd like to think, obviously, I worked there for 4 years. I've got a lot of the players there I actually brought to the club. So they've been there for a number of years. I've got a lot of close friends in behind the scenes as well. So yeah, and in my view, I thought my spell, probably, arguably, maybe after the January before my last window before I left, but certainly for 3.5 seasons, I thought it was a successful time. You know, we made a lot of money in players, competed for basically the playoffs 3 years running. So yeah, I look at it as a positive rather than a negative.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You mentioned Tarek Fosu, and I thought he was extraordinary on Saturday. 1 minute he's heading the ball off the line, next minute he's up the other end, and he could have even scored a hat-trick. He was extraordinary. Was he playing a different role on Saturday than he normally does, or was it just to do with improved fitness?
Well, he played a slightly different role in the fact we played a back four, and he played sort of up on the left-hand side. However, when he plays wing-back for us and he plays on the left side, he ends up in that position half the time anyway. You know, but his starting position was slightly higher than what it had been in previous games. But the difficulty we've got is when you go into each game, they played the front three, which meant we wanted an extra player behind the ball, so it's easy to play with a back four. If we play with 5 versus 3, we're going to have 2 players behind the ball spare, which means we're not going to be effective enough in attack. So it allowed me to bump him up on that side. What he does bring us that is really useful for me is he's the one player that gives us complete flexibility. And what I mean by that is, with him in the team, I can fluctuate from a back 4 to a back 5 really quite simply, especially if Tyrese is in the team, because Tyrese can bump wide, he can bump up, and then the dynamics of how we play differ quite a lot.
And is he going to give you selection problems when Josh Tymon's fit?
That'll be based on how we're playing, how Tariq's playing, how Josh Tymon's playing. But the thing is with Tariq can play either side. You know, he can play on the left or the right. He's equally as comfortable. So yeah, they'll be good headaches for us to have, and hopefully the lads are all back soon, and then we've got a whole complement to choose from.